Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at Eileen. William Oldroyd's new feature is out. I did not see Lady Macbeth with Florence Pugh, his last movie, but it got rave reviews. He's a big theater director. I'm very excited to talk about what is probably Anne Hathaway's most exciting performance of 2023. We're also going to take a look at The Boy and the Heron. Hayao Miyazaki's returned after over 10 years in retirement with a new feature. I'd give him a hard time about it, but the man never misses, and The Boy and the Heron is no exception. Stick around for the review. We're talking about the Golden Globes. They're not as exciting as the Oscars, but hey, who knows? They might be a bellwether for what's to come. And there's a lot of good nominees that I'm excited to get to. And before we get to all that, we need to talk about the news. Our first story this week, Austin Butler's The Bikeriders has a summer release date. You might remember the trailer of this, the motorcycle cruise, right? And Jodie Comer's getting interviewed about her exciting husband, Austin Butler, and Tom Hardy does an accent in it. It was supposed to come out December 1st. Then it got pushed back. Now it's coming out again. Andy, why haven't we seen this movie yet? What's the holdup?
So it was mostly pushed because they were not going to be able to get any star power because of the strikes. And so Disney took it off the release slate entirely. They thought they were going to shelve it completely, but they've ended up selling it to Focus Features, who's going to distribute it in summer 2024 on June 21st. So it's going to be a big summer release. And this has been described as kind of a Goodfellas on motorcycles. Takes place in the 60s. Jodie Comer has this very strong Midwest accent. Jodie Comer is British, if you didn't know. And then Tom Hardy doing some sort of mumblecore accent again, which I can't wait to see. So the movie is coming out, but it's going to be a big summer release before we see.
Very excited to see Tom Hardy's new weird accent. And also excited to see Mike Faist back. He did Spielberg's West Side Story, and he shines in that movie. And I figured, okay, we're going to see more of this kid. This seems to be his next feature. Also, he's in Luca Guadagnino's new movie. Yeah, Challengers. Also got pushed back. As a consumer, I'm being a little honest. Maybe you can help me feel better about this, Andy. This movie gets pushed back by Disney. Disney says, you know what? Maybe not for us. It's not really moving the way we want to, and they sell it. It tells me they lack confidence in the creativity. Is this destined to be like a bad movie?
I heard a lot of buzz, and usually a summer release like that usually means it's a pretty big deal. I think that they really wanted to put this up for awards this year, and they're going to miss that window because that's usually the October through the end of the year. So they just didn't want to hold on to it for a whole nother year and would rather distribute it to someone else. I don't know why they're not distributing it themselves. Maybe it's not quite close enough to the Disney brand, but I think that's why it's being moved or why it's been sold.
June 21st, 2024 is when we're going to be expecting the Bikeriders. Don't know what it'll be going up against that week, but it'll be no slouch for sure. And hey, now that the actors can do press for it, since the SAG-AFTRA strikes are over, we should get Tom Hardy talking about his weird accent, and that's always exciting. Our next story, this one's real interesting, probably the biggest story of the week. Tubi, the free streaming service, is going to be streaming DC's The Batman and Suicide Squad and other DC Universe movies and TV shows. Variety reported on this week. Apparently, Warner Brothers is just striking deals with ad-supported streamer Tubi to put a bunch of DC content over there. Hold on a second, Andy. I thought this is why HBO is so expensive. Why are the free platforms getting this premium swag?
Well, what's interesting is when streaming first started, everyone was initially licensing their properties out to like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, maybe. And it was an easy deal. It was quick money. You just license out your content. But then everyone started trying to create their own streaming service because they saw how much money Netflix was making. And so then everyone pulled their content. But then everyone realized how expensive and unprofitable streaming is. So now we're back to the licensing again. So we're kind of coming full circle in the streaming business. This is not just the Batman, but other recent DC properties like the Suicide Squad, Black Adam, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, plus a huge amount of kind of reality TV stuff that Warner Brothers does is going to Tubi, which kind of makes me think of why am I paying for Max if you're just licensing out your content to the free services?
Well, one thing's for sure, ad-supported services make a silly amount of money, and it seems like a kind of odd idea, right? Like, aren't we just watching TV again? But the difference is, if you're watching on Tubi, you're not paying for cable. Just CBS directly is making their money off the ads. Or in this case, Warner Brothers, who is striking up a bunch of exclusive channels with Tubi as well, like Warner Brothers TV Classic Cinema and TV in the Garage. Oh, that's exciting. Warner Brothers TV, the FBI. Ooh, it's just going to be FBI stuff all the time on Tubi. I don't check out Tubi really at all. I've heard that they have a pretty deep bench for like old horror movies and like odd one-off features. But I guess it's a good thing that Warner Brothers is double dipping. I feel like a skeptic's view is the cynical person would say that Warner Brothers has just been upping the price of HBO, getting it to a point where we're all paying this wildly inflated price, and then just licensing out content on the back end anyway and making like double money, right? They're getting like the double fees from subscribers, and they get they get ad dollars from licensed stuff, right? Like,
this is kind of This is kind of following the old model of cable TV, where the networks, they would make money on both ends. They'd make money from studios selling, essentially selling their content to the or paying the networks to put it on their screen, and then they were also getting paid by advertisers for advertising during the shows. And we're kind of coming back to that. And this is also an issue because we've reached kind of peak viewership. Like we're done of the days of getting like Netflix getting 5 million more viewers every quarter. It's kind of peaking. And so now the only place to go to get even more money is the ad space. And so that's where we're kind of at in the whole streaming landscape.
Yeah. The credit where it's due. Look, it's a great library. And let's remember that DC is pivoting heavily, creatively going forward, right? James Gunn is moving forward with new Superman in 2025. We're going in a different direction from there. So what you're getting here is a lot of, like, older archive DC, yeah, but like the DC classic, right? Coca-Cola classic. That's what you're getting. Plus, of course, Matt Reeves, the Batman, Joker. You will still get things that tie in. Like, ultimately, probably a good thing for DC fans, right? More people seeing DC content is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, this stuff does have expiration dates on it. The Batman's a couple of years old, but like things like Suicide Squad is from 2016, so we're looking at 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old movies. So it's not really like the end of the world. It worries me if more new things start kind of cropping up on these fast channels, as they call them.
Yeah, I'm not a subscriber, but I've heard nothing but good things. If you're willing to watch the ads, anything can happen. And one more story this week regarding the possibilities of anything happening. I think I was surprised to see Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron hitting a $12.8 million opening in the United States. This is the biggest opening of his movies ever, which is weird because Miyazaki, I think, is acclaimed in circles of people who know him, but like is not a household name. You could not walk into an American house and say, "Do you know who Hayao Miyazaki is?" And they would know. Like, so this is a bit of a surprise that this movie's had this much buzz. What's going on at the box office, Andy?
Yeah, The Boy and the Heron had a huge opening, 12.8 million, the biggest of Hayao Miyazaki's career, like you said. I think the biggest opening for like a Japanese animated film, definitely the first time it's ever opened number one at the box office. Also, this has already done huge numbers in Japan. It's made over $80 million. So we're looking at over $100 million for this animated film. Also, Godzilla Minus One is also in the top 5. So it's kind of the first time that two Japanese films, Japanese made films, are in the top of the box office.
Reminds me of when I was a kid and like we used to watch, Looney Tunes and Western animation on Saturday morning cartoons. And slowly over time you get like Pokemon and Digimon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Before you know it, right? Like the whole medium shifted. And like what better time, right? Like we are fortunate that like amazing stories are coming out of different parts of the world and coming to a place where we can watch them in cinemas. Like that's a good thing, right? I'm amazed at the number of foreign films I've seen that have been like stellar. Not just because 2023 is a stellar year in film, but because, I don't know, it's just the way it works. Like the world's getting smaller. The internet brings us together. Ultimately a good thing, right? I have no problem with good movies coming out. And Boy and the Heron is no exception. We'll be doing the review at the end of the episode. So stick around for that. We're also going to talk about Eileen and the Golden Globes for that. But one more thing. Did we talk about Renaissance, Andy? We should talk about Renaissance.
Yes. Renaissance, which is Beyonce's concert film, which opened pretty well last week, had a steep drop off, almost 80%, which isn't unexpected. Taylor Swift's huge Eras Tour concert film also had a pretty big drop off. A lot of the concert films are one and done. Like, people don't really go back to them. So that's not surprising, but it's still done pretty good business for a concert film, and we're probably going to continue to see these as a trend.
Right. It's word of mouth, right? You're either gonna go see that concert film because you really want to see it, or you will skip it, but you're probably not gonna go see it and tell your friends, oh my God, we have to go again, right? Like, it's probably a one and done. Makes sense. Not that odd. Ultimately, not a bad weekend at the movies. But as far as the show's concerned and the films we've seen, we're fortunate this week, I think. It's not every week we get to talk about two movies that are like really bold and interesting. And I think the lineup this week's really stellar. Starting with this first one, of course. I should not hog the stage anymore. Andy's agreed to take the summary. So, Andy, please take it away.
Eileen. So this is about Eileen, who is played by Thomasin McKenzie. This takes place in the 60s. Eileen is kind of living in a trapped world. She works at a local prison. She's a kind of secretary there. She lives at home with her kind of drunken, forcefully retired father, who's a former police officer, played by Shea Wiggum. Eileen is kind of constantly just verbally abused and harassed by the older women at the prison, who say, like, yeah, you're too old, why aren't you married, why don't you have children? Her father kind of says the same thing: you're not going to be anything, Eileen, you're never going to go anywhere, you're going to die in this house. Kind of takes on a lot of abuse. When one day Anne Hathaway's character Rebecca, who's the new prison psychologist, shows up, and she's just absolutely fabulous. She dresses really stylishly. She has big, bright platinum blonde hair. She drives a red Thunderbird. Is just the exact opposite of what Eileen is, and is everything Eileen kind of wants to be. They strike up a friendship and get to know each other, and the film kind of goes in one direction, and then is kind of about a lot of other things, about kind of prejudging people of appearances and what they may or may not be. And it's also about the prison that Eileen lives in, metaphorically, not just where she works at. So that's all I'm going to say about our setup. Zach, what'd you think?
Eileen is a really unique feature. It's from William Oldroyd, who's traditionally a theater director. His last movie was Lady Macbeth. That was his first, I think, directorial feature. And that was in 2016. So it's been a while since he's done that. It was with Florence Pugh. And now we have Thomasin McKenzie, hot off the set of Last Night in Soho. And Anne Hathaway, who you can tell like really read this script and wanted to dig in to the character. She plays it like it's Shakespeare. And she's great. Like, it's based on a book. The author of the book also helped pen the screenplay. And it's funny, the author, whose name is escaping me, unfortunately, right now, I'll have to figure it out when Andy's talking next. They said that they liked the movie more than the book, actually. I think a rare thing. I think it's just tighter. And ultimately, it's a character drama, right? Like, that's ultimately what we're doing. We're looking at a director of theater. Like, he's getting into who these characters are. And Eileen is this, like, fascinatingly vulnerable, small person who is just so pushed around by her life and the people in it. And it's charming, really, for most of the film, for her to find not only this role model character in this lightning bolt that is Anne Hathaway, who's drifted into the prison, drifted into her life, Rebecca, but also maybe develop an affinity for this person, right? And start to kind of fancy them. And Rebecca teaches her how to smoke, and then they go dancing, and then before you know it, Eileen goes in a very exciting direction. That we'll talk about more in a second. I liked Eileen a lot, but it's also small, and I think that's important. It's intimate, and it's not. I liked it a lot, I guess, and we'll talk more about it. Where do we start talking about this, Andy?
Oh gosh, where to start? There's so much. I want to kind of talk about tone, because this is a very serious movie, but it's also kind of a dark comedy. Like there are some moments that are so funny. Like Eileen starts to kind of copy everything that Dr. Rebecca does. Like Dr. Rebecca smokes and she kind of drinks heavily and she's a little bit more on the wild side. And Thomas Mackenzie has never really indulged, and she starts. I mean, and it's so funny because you get those comedic moments where she doesn't really know how to like drink properly and not drink too much, which she definitely does. Like it's funny watching her trying to smoke a cigarette and just kind of cough on it. And then there's a bit about making she drinks coffee and puts so much sugar in it, like she won't stop pouring it in because she doesn't really know how to mix it. So you get these really funny moments amongst very serious things. Like her father, like I said, played brilliantly by Shea Wiggum, is just kind of a drunk. He's an alcoholic. He's been forcefully retired from the uh, police station. He waves his gun around and scares the neighbors. He's very verbally abusive to her. He's like, "You're nothing like your mother. You'll never be anything like she was. You'll never get married." Like he's terrible to her, and she experiences a lot of that throughout the film. But then she also, one thing I enjoy, she has these fantasies constantly of different types of things she wants to do to herself, to other people, both good and bad. And it's a good kind of way of putting this in the character's mind. Dr. Rebecca, played by Anne Hathaway, is that she's that femme fatale. She looks like she's trouble, and she definitely is in a lot of ways. But is also has a few secrets of her own that we might not think of. And the cast is really stellar in this.
Yeah, I like the way the film brings you into like Eileen's world. It's slow at first and it kind of takes its time. But Eileen is very prominently on screen. She's a character who's got troubles of her own. She's in no way perfect. Like not only is she meek, but she doesn't usually like take advantage of speaking her mind. She sits back. She's got a couple of odd psychological quirks. She's prone to maybe daydreaming. Sometimes she doesn't show up to work, and most interestingly, she's a bit of a pervert, actually, which is odd. Film kind of opens with that, just gets you going, like, oh god, okay, this is where we're at. But yeah, like meeting this character of Rebecca is a revelation for her, because Rebecca is not only like this object of desire, but also everything she desires herself to be. Rebecca, meanwhile, of course, is classic femme fatale. People have said this film is Hitchcockian, and I think it's important to address why that is. It's because of its set dressing. Just like Alexander Payne's The Holdovers, this whole movie is film grain and old production stills and classic soundtrack. It's very like trying to feel older, right? Everything fits in place. All the cars are old. Everybody's wearing older outfits. The houses are kind of run down. But more importantly, Anne Hathaway looks like she walked out of Psycho, right? Like she looks like our platinum blonde. She looks like she walked out of that movie and into this one. And she comes from an odd place, right? She went to Harvard, but the prison, the guy who runs the prison the prison warden said she might have gone somewhere else. And she smokes and has this car, but she says she didn't really come from money, and she's kind of perplexing. And the movie does a really good job of like drawing you in to try to reel you in to see as the audience member, like, who is this person really? And meanwhile, Eileen is getting drawn in by her gravitas and you know who she is. And Shea Wiggum is like the drunkest slob ever, and he's so mean. Like, for as funny as this movie can be in its most cynical moments, he's so mean, laughably mean almost to her. And so he doesn't hit her or anything. It's just brutally verbal. My God, brutally verbal abuse for Eileen. So in this weird way, like you, the audience, you really get invested in what Eileen's doing just because you want her so much to escape this life, like escape these problems she has and become the confident person that she so much sees Rebecca to be. But then, like, the film takes an interesting turn, and that would be the final reason I think people call it Hitchcockian, and I don't think you, Andy, and I are going to reveal any of that here. And yeah.
No, and like I said, the film takes some really it sets up a lot of expectations, and it follows through on some of them, and some not as much. What's fascinating to me is just again the prison that Eileen lives in, the one of expectations of, you know, she's like she's in her young 20s, and everyone's asking her why she's not married, and it's revealed she had to drop out of school to care for her dad, but she's kind of trapped by that. So a lot of the movies is about her breaking free. And I would say she's sexually frustrated. I wouldn't say she's a pervert, but that's part of being a young 20s and not having any prospects, because you just work all day and take care of your drunk dad. um it's a you're very frustrated for her, and you're cheering on her side for her to break out of this kind of mundane life that she's kind of been forced into.
You're right. The backdrop of the boys' prison is really interesting. Like it's a fascinating little like cage to rattle your characters around in, because there's so much like trauma and problems and problem children there. There is a really, I should say, while I'm talking about how cynical this movie is, a part bits that's funny. There's a really great like Christmas play scene when there's all these kids in the audience that are like acting up and screwing it up and shouting at the poor actors, and really really funny. But I think like what makes this movie work so good is its script and your performances. William Oldroyd does a great job behind the camera, but it's like 4:3. It's tight, and he's got good framing, but it's real claustrophobic, and it fits the prison setting. It fits the prison setting great. But man, I cannot understate how great Anne Hathaway is in this movie. Like, she's awesome. Like, really sinking her teeth in. This is a character I can really dig into. A little bit of ambiguity, a bit of mystery. Meanwhile, Thomasin McKenzie, I think, is understated and probably once again underrated. Like, I feel like I was maybe harsh on my Soho review, because I think she really is tremendous in that movie, especially considering something wildly different like Jojo Rabbit, where she's a much more confident individual. Like, Eileen manages to be this person who is very sympathetic. You want to be friends with Eileen, right? You want to reach to the screen and give her a hug when her dad's shouting at her. But at the same time, like, you want Eileen to do the right thing, and you ultimately want her to find her way. And when she meets this Rebecca character and they end up kind of traveling down this path together, you find that she may or may not get there, and I think that's good tension. Like, it makes it exciting for what ultimately would be like a smaller film in the hands of any other director. Oldroyd really brings it out, like adds some life and some color to it.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to comment on was the ratio. It's not 4:3. I just looked it up. It's a 1.66, which, if you've seen The Witch, not Ari Aster, the other one, Robert Eggers, it's that same kind of aspect ratio where the film kind of seems taller. It's not as wide as it normally is, and it really gives us just a lot of height in the movie. So another interesting choice.
By the way, the author is Tessa Moshfegh. I'm sorry. She wrote the original book. She wrote the script with her writing partner, Luke Goebel. I actually might be partners too, but I'm not sure. And I shouldn't speak on that. Anyway, Andy, I'm running out of things to say. I don't want to give anything away about Eileen. Any other thoughts or recommendations?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Eileen?
Absolutely. It's a phenomenal film, really interesting characters and situation. It's really funny. Content warning, it does cover some very serious topics about domestic abuse and things of that nature. So just be prepared for that. Despite it being very funny, it is also very, very dark. But I really enjoyed it and highly recommend.
Yeah, I think same boat. It's good stuff. I don't think you need to rush to a theater to see it, unless you have like, a cozy little indie cinema near you. You can like get a cup of coffee and sneak in and kind of enjoy Eileen, because it's understated. But when it comes to streaming, I think you should definitely check it out. Like, relax one evening, grab a cocktail. It's not long. It's 97 minutes. It's a little like watching a play. Like, it's thoughtful. It doesn't play out like a play. It's not like Darren Aronofsky's The Whale or anything, but like in the way that it's intimate and it's, really concentrated. And like, I think it's good stuff. I think you'll enjoy Eileen. But we have much bigger fish to fry than just Eileen this year, because we need to talk about everything that's happened in 2023. In a tight segment, we're going to review some nominees from exciting awards ceremony coming up, the Golden Globes. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the death of cinema. So we're talking the Golden Globe nominations. One of the big first awards list has just come out on Monday, and these aren't the most reputable awards, but they're bit of a precursor for the Oscars. A lot of times they line up at least somewhat with what those nominees might be. The Oscars get announced later in January. There are a ton of nominees because they split things into both drama and comedy categories, and they've also bumped the number of nominees from 5 to 6. So there's basically twice as many nominees as you would get in something like the Oscars. So we're going to go through the most important ones, and we're going to do it quick since there are so many. So I'm going to start with Best Motion Picture Drama, which is Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Past Lives, The Zone of Interest, and Anatomy of a Fall. Zach, what are you thinking of this category?
Man, probably. I don't know. I think it's going to be Oppenheimer or Killers, honestly. Like, I know A24's got a couple of features on here. I haven't seen Zone of Interest, but it feels real high concept based on what I've seen. Same with Anatomy of a Fall. Past Lives, I think, again, it's too big, and I just don't know enough about Maestro to say for sure. So I think it's going to be one of those two. You got one?
Probably Oppenheimer. Maestro doesn't come out until Christmas on Netflix, and then The Zone of Interest isn't coming out until like February. So that's supposed to be a big deal, but it's not coming out for a while.
Let's remember the Golden Globes is voted on by like 300 journalists, all right, whereas the Academy is like 10,000 industry people. So it's a tighter range, slightly different. Best Picture, Musical or Comedy. The nominees are Barbie, Poor Things, American Fiction, The Holdovers, May December, and Air from Ben Affleck, right? That Matt Damon story of a champion, but really a story of Nike movie. Andy, what do you think?
Why is Air on here?
Why is Air on here?
I mean,
don't
Eileen
know.
Honestly, Eileen should be on there. Barbie's probably going to win this category. I've heard good things about American Fiction. That's also coming out on Christmas. Nice to see The Holdovers on there. A lot of controversy behind May December being in the comedy category, because that's there is some. It is parody in some ways, but it is a serious drama about child sexual assault. So it's a lot of people have been like, why is this in this category? But that's it's just a weird way that the Golden Globes are.
You should, if you want to know more, go check out our review from May December last week. It's great. Would recommend. It's on YouTube if the individual. I think Barbie's probably taking it. Like I think Barbie's taking it. How is Barbie not taking it? Right? No, you're next. Go ahead.
Best Director, motion, and this is just for both. Bradley Cooper for Maestro, Greta Gerwig, Barbie, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things, which comes out this Friday, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, and Celine Song for Past Lives.
I feel like it's going to be Scorsese or Nolan again. I don't know. I know Oppenheimer and Flower Moon are very different films, but like I just think they're both like 2.5 hour period blockbusters, right? Like I feel like they start to get lumped together a little bit. I would love to see something like Yorgos Lanthimos win for Poor Things, but Yorgos Lanthimos fans know that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
All right,
I'd love to see Greta Gerwig
win Celine Song for Past Lives, Cooper maybe even for Maestro, but I just don't know.
Yeah, they're probably gonna go with the bigger films. Celine Song is I think too new. Bradley Cooper, I don't know. I hear that people are annoyed at how much he's like, yes, I starred and directed in it too. We'll see. And also, everyone needs to remember that these awards are not merit based at all. During award season, these films are campaigned for. There's a lot of money poured in. There's a lot of marketing behind it. There's politics. There's things like, well, this person won before, so now it's time for someone new. So, and it can get a real ugly and kind of dirty game. So just keep that in mind, that this is not a merit based thing at all. Zach, what's our next category?
Best screenplay for motion picture. Barbie, Poor Things, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Past Lives, and Anatomy of a Fall. We've heard all of these already. I think it's probably like low key. I think it's going to be Barbie. Like I just feel like that script does so much work. You tell people there's a Barbie movie in theaters, they don't care. You go see it, you go, oh, I get why this made $1 billion. Like that script is kind of the whole thing. It's pretty incredible, but I also hear Poor Things is pretty wild. And for what it's worth, Anatomy of a Fall is a great script, but I don't know. What do you think?
So what's interesting about this is that they don't differentiate between original scripts and scripts based on previous works, like Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer, both based on books. So it's just kind of an interesting category. I think honestly Barbie for me, because I think that film had a huge challenge in creating a story off a toy that has no like real backstory or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. A lot of acting awards, like I said, because there's two big categories. Best performance by an actor, drama, Bradley Cooper, Maestro, Cillian Murphy, Oppenheimer, Leonardo DiCaprio, Killers of the Flower Moon, Coleman, Domingo, and Rustin, which we haven't really seen much about. Andrew Scott, All of Us Strangers, and Barry Keoghan in Saltburn.
First off, love Coleman Domingo. Glad to see him on here. I haven't seen Rustin, but my man's got chops. I hear Andrew Scott's great in All of Us Strangers, but haven't seen it. If I had to pick one, I think I'm going to go with DiCaprio. The way he does that like underbite thing, and I've been quoting, I do love that money, sir, every day since I've seen that movie. Like, it's got memes. Personal favorite, it's DiCaprio by a nose, but also I love Barry and Saltburn. What do you think, Andy?
Cillian Murphy for me, for sure. And again, it might be a precursor to see who wins or who gets nominated for the Oscars.
Well, more importantly than best performance by an actor, best performance by actress, we got Lily Gladstone, Killers of the Flower Moon, fan favorite this year. Carey Mulligan in Maestro, Sandra Hüller in Anatomy of a Fall, Annette Bening in Naiad. If not even know what that don't even know what that movie's about.
She's a swimmer.
Greta Lee in Past Lives and Kaylee Spaney in Priscilla, which Andy covered on the show, and that review did surprisingly well on YouTube. I was really surprised, Andy. So you must have covered it good. Who do you think's taking it, Andy?
A lot of hype behind Lily Gladstone as a newcomer, but man, this is a really stacked category. All these gave incredible performances in these films, so we'll see who comes out on top. Moving on to best performance by an actress, musical or comedy. Fantasia Barrino for The Color Purple, Jennifer Lawrence, No Hard Feelings, which is a big surprise, Natalie Portman for May December, Alma Poisty for Fallen Leaves, which I haven't heard anything about, Margot Robbie for Barbie, and Emma Stone for Poor Things.
Yeah. Everybody get out of Barbie's way, right? It's like Robbie's walking off that stage. She's got to be. She's Barbie. That's my pick. I like, listen, and I like, it's not just because she's good in the movie. Like, I love Margot Robbie. Everybody else is great too. But again, like, it's Barbie. It's Barbie. And the Golden Globes is a journalist thing. Like, this is all they do. Like, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, there's also things like, they want to get viewers in and they want to reward movies that people know and have seen. And like Poor Things is coming out this week. Meanwhile, Barbie's had 6 months of buzz for awards.
If Past Lives or Anatomy of a Fall win any of these, 65% of the internet's going to be like, why do they give movies awards to stupid movies nobody's seen? I've never heard of this picture. Like, come on. Like, a lot of it's got to be mainstream stuff. But of course, the mainstream stuff is good. Made $1 billion. Like, respect. Am I up next? Actress?
Yep.
Actor? I've lost the plot.
Actor musical or comedy.
Actor, musical, or comedy. Nick Cage in Dream Scenario. Timothy Chalamet in Wonka. Matt Damon in Air. Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers. Joaquin Phoenix in Beau is Afraid. And Jeffrey Wright, American Fiction. Now listen, I love Jeffrey Wright. I haven't seen American Fiction, but my man's got talent. But if there's anybody on this list who should be getting it, it's Giamatti for The Holdovers. And then secondly, maybe like, I don't know, Timothy Chalamet for Wonka. I think people hated Beau is Afraid enough to not give Joaquin Phoenix anything, which is a shame because I think that movie's cool. But, and I don't know about Dream Scenario with Nick Cage. Maybe, right? Fan favorite? What do you think?
I don't know why Nicolas Cage is on this list. I heard he's good, but I think he's just, they needed like an industry veteran. Not that Giamatti and Phoenix are. They really surprised to see Joaquin Phoenix on this. Like, but this is the only nomination for Beau is Afraid, which, like you said, I think everyone hated. Again, it's going to be about profile, and something like Wonka is going to be a really high profile movie, so it could go there. You never know. Let's see, best actor. Motion, gosh, there's so many.
A supporting actor. I mean, we skipped down to like score, cinematography. Listen. Supporting actors. There's all these. These are the supporting awards. They're fine. All right, we don't need to get to them. We're moving along, moving and shaking.
Jumping down to original score for motion picture. Ludwig Göransson for Oppenheimer. Jerskin Fendrix for Poor Things, Robbie Robertson for Killers of the Flower Moon, Michael Levi for The Zone of Interest, Daniel Pemberton for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and Joe Hisashi for The Boy and the Heron. My favorite score of the year is still Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I don't think that will win. I think it'll probably go to Goranson, but love the Spider-Verse soundtrack.
I think it's Goranson, not only because I think it's one of the most special of the year, that's why it's on this list, but also because I very smugly leaned over to Andy during the credits of Oppenheimer. I was like, score of the year, right? That's going to be, like, I called my shot so early, I got to stick with it now. Also, worth mentioning, we're going to talk about Boy and the Heron in a minute, but the score for Boy and the Heron, Joe Hisashi, is on here for a good reason. It's excellent. I'm very excited to talk about it. I want to jump down to Best Motion Picture Animated. Animated motion pictures, 6 categories. The Boy and the Heron, Speak of the Devil, talking about that in just a minute. Elemental from Disney, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the Super Mario Brothers movie, billion-dollar film this year, remember, Suzume, and Wish, the Disney animated princess film. Quite the list. Andy, what stellar animated feature this year isn't on here? Which one's missing? Do you know?
This category this year is an abomination because 3 of these should maybe not be on here. And the big snub goes to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which was one of my favorite films of the year, period. One of the best animated films of the year. Not on this list. Somehow Disney's Wish, which has been a huge bomb and no one likes it. And it's critically and audiences like have panned it. Elemental is solid, but like the Super Mario Brothers movie is only on here because it made a lot of money, because like we've said in our review, it's kind of a movie for babies. A lot of people also complaining that Nimona is not on here, which we didn't review, but is also a great animated film from this year.
We did a mini review for Nimona. I covered that one. Yeah. That's on the channel too. You can go check it out. Yeah, it's on YouTube. I think my favorite here is, it's probably Spider-Verse, right? Personal favorite, Heron. It's Heron by a nose. But dude, Spider-Verse is awesome. And like, it's hard to deny how much buzz that had going in. Like, come on, it's Spider-Verse, right?
Yeah, and like I said, a whole lot of Disney pandering going on here, or just pandering to the big studios, because everything else is much smaller. Like G Kids is who distributes The Boy and the Heron. Toho Company, who also owns the rights to Godzilla, made Suzume. And then they're just pandering to Disney, who just kind of made mediocre animated films this year. Jumping down to our kind of last category, this is a brand new one that they introduced here. It's cinematic and box office achievement, which we don't really know. We don't know what that means.
They say none of these are merit based, but this one feels like it might be a little merit based,
or at least money based.
Yeah.
So this one is Barbie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, John Wick Chapter 4, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Oppenheimer, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the Super Mario Brothers movie, and Taylor Swift The Eras Tour? ? So ideally this would just go to whoever made the most money, but they want to try to make it more complicated than that. So that's why it says cinematic and box office achievement. No one knows what that means. No one knows what the metric is, and why this is a category at all.
I tell you, if the box office achievement is put out a flat Tom Cruise movie, then Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is the king of the list here. But I don't really know what exactly this means. And in that way, I think it's exciting, right? People will talk about it. We're talking about it here on our Goofy Movie podcast. But if you got to look at one of these doing particularly incredible, low-key, it's probably Taylor Swift, right? Like, I would love to say Barbie, just real quick, or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 being a big bump in the Marvel space, when a lot of Marvel movies haven't been doing great. John Wick Chapter 4, right? Incredible action sequences in there. Oppenheimer, huge. Spider-Man Across the... Like, all of these have their own reason, I think, for being on here. I don't know how you just pluck one out and say this is the one of that, because all of those are fairly different things. But I don't know. Like, if anything, think like blew the socks off the box office this year, it's probably the Eras Tour, and then maybe Barbie following that.
Yeah, it's difficult to say. For one thing, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning lost money. Like, it was a commercially underwhelming. I don't think it was a bomb, but it didn't make near as much money as they were hoping. So it's surprised that's even on there. Also, this is the only category with 8 entries, which kind of doesn't make sense. Like, you should probably just keep it to 5 or 6. And if it's just based on money, then it's just Barbie, because that was the most profitable film of the year. Really confusing category, and this is just a way to get films that more people have seen in the awards. That way that they're hopefully have more people watching the awards. And they added Taylor Swift so they can hopefully get Taylor Swift to, do a Zoom meeting and show up on the awards like that. Like, that's the only reason that's on. That film was very profitable, despite it was made for like $20 million or something. So,
Dude, I didn't even think about that. How many clicks do they get how much ad revenue does the Golden Globes rake in if they get Taylor Swift walking on stage to accept a Golden Globe?
no way,
right? How
no way
many
she
people are going to
shows
watch
up.
that video? Like,
She's going to do a pre-recorded video.
Thank you so much. You shifted your whole thing. Yeah, no, it'll be fine. I honestly, I hope she does. Dude, that movie made a ton of money. Like, genuinely, I think if you're looking at some kind of box office achievement award, like low key, that should be considered. That's why she's on the list. Ultimately, not bad at the Golden Globes this year. I do think, like last year, the Oscars will be a bit different. We'll probably get a bit more emphasis on some of the more obscure stuff. I think we'll see more Ari Aster this year at the Oscars. More Beau is Afraid. Hopefully, something like Eileen getting something like a screenplay. I don't know, but maybe. I said on Twitter, any of the year Anne Hathaway would be getting an Oscar nom for Eileen, but I don't think she's going to this year just because the category is completely stacked. Incredible year at the movies. And it seems like it's going to be a good year at the Golden Globes, right, Andy?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who wins and how that shapes the Oscar nominees, because these awards are in mid to early January, and then a couple of weeks later it's the Oscar nominations. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up.
I'll tell you what'll be more interesting, talking about The Boy and the Heron. I'm really excited to talk about this movie. This is the last movie we're talking about for this episode. Then we'll talk about what's coming out next week. But The Boy and the Heron is a very unique feature. I should probably just get into the review bit. That makes sense. Let me put the footage on screen. The movie is The Boy and the Heron. So The Boy and the Heron is Hayao Miyazaki's return to cinema. After over a decade in retirement, the legendary animator is back with a feature that is similar, I think, to a lot of his older work. In parts, carries a lot of similar themes, but uniquely features a looser narrative space, almost more of a dreamlike kind of place to tell our story. Our story is of young Mahito, a young boy who is quickly moved out of Tokyo during the war following the air bombing of a factory where his mother is unfortunately tragically killed. He and his father move out of the city, into the country. It opens just like any other good Miyazaki movie with a kid in transition to a new place, right, that they can't control. And Mahito travels out there. He meets his new mother. He meets the grannies and the people that live in this wonderful old place. And just across the field, he sees this odd tower that his granduncle had built, he finds out. And it's traveling to that tower where he sees a gray heron, right? A symbol of death, something that feels like maybe it's almost kind of related to these feelings, these dreams he has of his mom and this tragic fire. And it's following that heron into the tower where Mahito travels to a world of the living and the dead and has to discover like what a sense of renewal is and how that affects his worldview and embracing the chaos. Many of the themes you find in a Hayao Miyazaki picture, but in a uniquely different way. And I'm excited to talk about this because it's not just Hayao Miyazaki doing a film. This is Hayao Miyazaki growing and changing. It's semi-autobiographical even. There are characters in here that feel like Miyazaki today. There are characters in here that represent, I think, a younger artist, right? Up and coming, growing into a world where they want something to change. I'm really excited to talk about this feature with you, Andy. But first of all, what did you think of The Boy and the Heron?
So this is one of Miyazaki's, I think, most challenging works. It's kind of grown on me over time. It's definitely something that takes a lot of introspection and thinking about, and it's kind of a vegetable movie where it's like it's doing your homework. It's challenging to watch and get through, but I think it's very interesting to talk about afterward. It's been very divisive. Some people either love it or kind of are confused by it and don't know what it's about. I'm a little bit in the middle, and it's growing on me, but it's definitely, I think, Miyazaki's most complex work, and I've seen the majority of his films, and they're known for being whimsical, being, easy to digest, relatable for kids, and this one is not that. I think it's very complicated. I think kids would be confused. I know adults that are confused, but it has a lot of the staples that we've come to love. It has these fantastic worlds and characters and deep, complex themes, and a lot of it is about Miyazaki's life. It's him coping with his own elements and tragic elements from his own life. Like his mother was killed, or she died when he was young. His father was the director of an airplane factory. That's why you see so many airplanes and birds and throughout all of his films. It's a big theme. So I think overall I enjoyed it, but it was definitely a challenging watch.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what works in Miyazaki films is present here, and more importantly, the first half of the movie reflects a lot of those previous features. There are tons of things that jump out to you that feel like old movies. Mahito arriving out in the country to escape wartime and go to school there is right out of My Neighbor Totoro, right? It is the same. It also is just like Spirited Away, finding this like tower place with these like 4 stained glass pieces where it's like, oh yeah, don't go in there. That's not good. That'll take you somewhere else, like same thing. And then once he ends up traveling into it, he travels through kind of a portal to the world of the undead, just like Spirited Away, his biggest feature. Our character is injured, similar to Princess Mononoke, and suffers the feeling of like hate and malice, like from the war and from what's happened to his family, like in the same way as that feature. The thing is, about halfway through this movie, once we start to travel into the world of real and unreal, those lines blur a bit. And before you know it, like we get almost an abstract dig into Miyazaki's frame of mind about the end of legacy, I think. Not only about love and loss, but and wishing for something better, but like the end of like your career. There's a character particularly in the film who is a bit older and a bit wiser who is seeking a successor. And that feels really reflective of Miyazaki, who's coming out of retirement to make this film. Wind Rises was very autobiographical. Wind Rises was his last film. That film was about his father, or a character like his father, at least, who made airplanes, this beautiful thing, but for war, like this terrible result, right? Like, and this film carries that too, that same thing, just like Mononoke and Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro. But I think because it starts so grounded and gets so blurry by the end, I think a lot of people leave the theater with a sour taste in their mouth. I for me, it was definitely weird. I was like, the credits rolled and I was thinking, are the people sitting next to me going to have liked this as much as I did? Because it's definitely odd. It becomes some bold cinema real fast.
Yeah, I think it's a film that would actually get better on rewatch. I definitely scoured the internet for some analysis for some insight into it. A lot of it I had figured out, a lot of it I kind of hadn't, but kind of knowing more about what it's about, I think would help a second viewing. It's interesting. Kind of the catalyst of the film is when when Mahito goes to school in this new place, but he kind of stands out because his father drives him to school in a big fancy car, and all the kids make fun of him and taunt him. He ends up getting in a fight, and he ends up self-harming with a stone. He literally just bashes his head with a rock and has this big injury, blood everywhere. And like this is what I mean. Like, this isn't really for kids in a lot of ways. And so it starts with this self-harm, which is indicative of like, kind of the self-hatred, or just frustration at the world around him. His mother has died. His father has married his aunt. They have a child on the way. He kind of hates all this change. He hates her. He hates where he is. And so his journey through the fantastical world is kind of him deciding, is he going to continue on with that, or is he going to choose a different way to live? Which is the original Japanese title is How Do You Live?
Yeah, which it's funny. I love the title Boy and the Heron, but after having seen it, I almost wish it had just hung on to that because I think it's slightly more profound. But one thing that I think is really special about Boy and Heron is the animation. I can tell you with confidence, Hayao Miyazaki has not lost a step. I cannot believe how complicated some of these very basic sequences turn out to be simply because of dedication to the craft. In a time when streaming and television and movies and TikTok is coming at us a million miles a second and people are learning how to make content faster and quicker and better and easier and using AI to generate whatever, it is uniquely profound to watch a film in a theater by somebody who is so dedicated to taking the time to hand animate every single little bit of something that it feels like you're watching people make the pyramids. Like you're watching something from a time that isn't around anymore. Nobody takes the time to make stuff like this studio does. And it does it under the direction of Hayao Miyazaki. Now, it is not all hand-drawn. It is not all watercolor backgrounds. There are some digitals, which I think is good because ultimately that helps us get where we're going. And in a lot of cases, it's not particularly noticeable at all. If anything, it can be used to enhance your experience, like having rippling water in the background or like a portal kind of something just out of focus that just kind of looks like it needs to. Ghibli's been experimenting with this in a lot of their work with Amazon Prime television shows. They made a couple of the small things, but what really works is what's in the foreground. And this is going to be our characters' hair, wind passing through our characters' hair and clothes. And not only that, but fabrics, designs on fabrics, which is wild. There's scenes in here where you have a number of characters running around, all who have clocks or gears or little plus and minus signs on their robes, and there'll be 8 of them on screen running. And I'm just like, oh my God, every single one of those designs had to be moved on those fabrics by hand, by frame for every one of these, you know. Birds are a huge thematic element in the film. Not only do we have our Heron, and we need to talk about voice acting in a second. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Regarding the Heron. Birds. We have all of these parakeets. We have these incredible creatures. We've got these pelicans. These little soul things that look like they fell right out of any other Studio Ghibli feature. Feathers. Birds have feathers. Feathers are exhausting to animate. Like, there's so much work poured into the experience that I feel like a lot of people, just don't even see. Because it's like watching any good movie. The magic of the film brings you in, and before you know it, you forget. Sorry, I've talked way too much about the animation. It's fantastic. The movie looks great.
Right. Before we move on to voice casting, I want to talk a little bit. One thing that I didn't really realize at the time, but this movie invokes a lot of kind of portal worlds, for lack of a better term, things like Alice in Wonderland, the Chronicles of Narnia, that kind of going down the rabbit hole, going to a new world and being navigated by a host that may not be entirely on your side, but it kind of has those fantastical inspirations, which is really interesting. This is one of the few Japanese films which that has a stellar English American or English voice cast that we're going to get into. We have Christian Bale, Gemma Chan, Robert Pattinson, who as the Gray Heron, which we'll talk about more in a bit. Mark Hamill, Karen Fukuhara. If you watch The Boys, that's where she's in that show. Florence Pugh and Willem Dafoe and Dave Bautista. So a really stacked cast for the voices, and Robert Pattinson doing this incredible voice for the Heron. Like, he's unrecognizable, and it's this really grating. It sounds like it probably hurt his voice to do. It's amazing. I'm not going to try and replicate it. And apparently that's what the Japanese actor also did, and so Robert Pattinson wanted to do bring that same energy to his character.
Yeah, incredible voice cast, not only because you're using like really great current talent that you can advertise on, but also because you have a lot of returning actors from previous works. Christian Bale is back from Howl's Moving Castle. Florence Pugh did one of these movies. I can't remember which one. I know Mark Hamill was in Castle in the Sky. He's the bad guy in Castle in the Sky. That one's way older, but he's back. And Pattinson, like I'm sure there's voice acting awards somewhere, but if there was a category at the Oscars, he'd have it. There's no question about what he's doing in this movie. It is incredible. We've talked about Pattinson's great voice work before. The Devil All the Time on Netflix. Delusions, right? His work in The Lighthouse. Incredible. I know my man can do accents. This is another level. Like, nobody ever doubt Pattinson in a voice cast. Good God. If anything, if you see Rob Pattinson in a voice cast, you should be excited because he's going to go all the way. Incredible voice cast. Like, everybody's fantastic, including not newcomer, but our lead Mahito, played by Luca Padovan. He's done some TV, nothing particularly exciting, young kid, but does a fine job holding it up. Otherwise, tragically, I don't know if I have much more to say about this feature. Did I mention the music? The music's incredible. Joe Hisaishi. It's nominated for a Golden Globe. Don't know if you've heard that. You did. We talked about it like last segment, but stellar music, stellar colors, stellar direction. I don't know if I have much more to say about it. Andy, what do you think?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend The Boy and the Heron?
I would with some caveat. I would because it is an incredible, like masterful animated story with one of our greatest living directors of film, not just animated film, just film in general, who is in the twilight of his career. He's like in his 80s, and he says this is his last film. We'll see, because he's retired like 3 times before this. So we'll see. It might actually be. So for those reasons alone, you should definitely check it out. I will say it is a challenging watch. It is long. It's a full 2 hours. It's a little slow. I think it's got a long first act, and it's a little all over the place. It's kind of confusing. It's very metaphorical, very symbolic. It's going to make you think a lot, but I think it's an incredible film, and he's an incredible director that you should challenge yourself to go see.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Born Heron's great. I think if you're a Ghibli fan, you will enjoy it. Just don't walk in thinking you're watching Spirited Away 2. Because, I mean, again, even for parts of it, it feels like it's going that way. It's intentionally subversive. There's even a very explicit scene where a character is traveling into the tower, like in Spirited Away, and they intentionally go a different direction. Like, I think if you go in with the idea that you're seeing something that is uniquely different, even though it will at times feel similar because of Miyazaki's return to themes like nature and renewal and war and chaos and malice, I think you'll come out with something really special. I think Boy and the Heron's really good. I think time is only going to look kindly on this feature in his library, in his body of work. People will only grow on this movie. Boy and Heron's great. Please go see it. And please listen next week when we're talking about, what movies are we talking about next week, Andy? What are we talking about next week?
Wonka, the Willy Wonka prequel film starring Timothée Chalamet. This is supposed to be a big deal. It's getting a lot of buzz, a lot of positive reviews around. So we're going to be looking at that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're also going to be looking at Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things, starring Emma Stone and Mark. I can't remember. Hulk. I'm drawing a blank. Anyways,
Ruffalo. Me too.
Mark,
I was dying.
Yeah. So kind of polar opposites, because Wonka's definitely a fun family film that's probably going to be a big hit, and Poor Things, like there's people walking out of the cinema, which is what I always want to see. If people are walking out, throwing up in the aisles, that's what the movie I want to go see.
That's right.
But those, and we might be doing our top 10. We'll see. There's still a ton out. Releasing the week after, on December 22nd, are Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Anyone But You, which is the rom-com starring Sydney Sweeney and Glenn
Howerton.
Glenn Campbell.
Glengarry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always be closing.
The Iron Claw, which we're really excited about, which is the Von Erich wrestling film starring Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, and I can't remember the other one. That's supposed to be a huge...
The kid from Triangle of Sadness. Boy, it really starts to blur together.
Harris Dickinson. That's
God,
right.
we're such
bar
trivia. Yeah.
The Iron Claw. So that we're really looking forward to that. American Fiction with Jeffrey Wright, and Migration. So that's 6 releases, all on December 22nd. Some of those might be limited to just New York and LA. And then Christmas Day, The Color Purple and Ferrari are also opening. So a bunch of movies still to come out. So we might wait on our top 10. We might not. We'll see. But that's what next week looks like.
I tell you, I am tragically overhyped for Poor Things. I have not heard a single poor thing about it. Even when it's like people walked out, like, oh God, that gets us salivating, right? Like, that's what you want to hear. Wonka, meanwhile, let me tell you, I probably was underhyped because I wasn't really excited for that movie. But not only do you have your Paddington director Paul King back, critic reviews are incredible. They're saying Chalamet's amazing. It's overselling in Europe. It's overperforming. Like, all signs point to Wonka being a banger. And remember, when you're thinking, wow, I can't believe Wonka did so well, you heard it here first on Off Script when Andy said it 3 months ago that he thought Wonka was going to be a hit. So, hey, man, that's why it's important to listen to you boys about what's going on at the movies. And we talk about it every single week right here on Off Script Film Review. If you want to keep up with us and keep up with what we're talking about and hear our exciting opinions and maybe some movie news, right? Who's winning the Golden Globes or who might be taking the next Oscar home, the best way to do that is subscribe to Off Script Film Review on your favorite podcast app, on your favorite, I was going to say, your favorite video app, but it's YouTube. We're on YouTube, and we're on great things are happening on YouTube, by the way. You should come check it out. We're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all the usual places. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia. You might even be listening to one of us on one of. You might even be hearing us on one of those apps right now. There it is. And I should wrap it up because I'm starting to get tongue-tied. We're on the web. We're on the internet at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com, and offscriptfilmreview.com is our website where we post interviews and other stuff and exciting things going on. From all of us at Offscript, it's a fine outro. It's a fine outro. From all of us at Offscript, the home. Go see The Boy and the Heron. From all of us at Offscript, the home of old cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.